What are the chances of all of them being murdered right after playing that video game?
Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, where I cover vampires, werewolves, and all kinds of supernatural creatures. In this video we're going to be looking at the movie Stay Alive from 2006. Same year as the last movie I covered, Pulse. I remember seeing the advertisements for Stay Alive when I was younger and thought it looked like the coolest movie ever. A horror movie about a video game, and if you die in the game, you die in real life. Such a simple but interesting concept. Plus it has Jimmy Simpson and Frankie Muniz, so how could you go wrong? I will be looking at the extended, unrated version of the movie, not the PG-13 version for obvious reasons. If you haven't seen the unrated version, it's much better than the theatrical. It has many added and extended scenes, plus 2 characters who were completely cut out. One thing is though, the unrated version is way too difficult to find. The only place I could find it was on Internet Archive. It's almost like a lost piece of media at this point. Anyway, let's get into the movie Stay Alive, how this video game is killing people, and how it's connected to a 200-year-old woman known as the Blood Countess. The movie begins with a scream and the flash of a creepy face. We can tell right away this is a video game cinematic. We are already in the game. The player is holding a lantern, walking into a large mansion. It looks like the power is out, providing an extra creepy atmosphere. This game looks like it would have been so much fun to play in 2006. The player continues through the mansion, and as the lightning cracks, we see the reflection of someone in the mirror. He keeps walking and passes a painting on the wall. After he passes, the woman wearing red moves. As he continues through the creepy hallways, he stops and stares down the dark corridor. From the other perspective, we see a shadow come into sight. It's the woman from the painting. She slowly approaches when the hallway goes pitch black. Then we see flashes of her lunging at the player. He turns and runs down the hallway, trying to escape, but as he reaches the front door, it slams shut. To his left is someone crawling on the wall like Spider-Man, then creepy children running from the other room. He runs up the stairs as fast as possible, but is greeted by another figure. So he opens the door to his right, but finds some kind of torture room. Scared by the sight of the bodies, he shuts the door, but as soon as he does, the woman with the red dress attacks and he flies off the balcony, being hung by a chain coming from the roof. We then see the game over text and the camera zooms out from the TV. After he dies in the game, we see what looks like a face appear behind him for a moment. The person playing the game looks terrified. This is Loomis Crowley. He immediately calls his friend and says, "I played this new game called Stay Alive. Seriously man, sick as stuff since Fatal Frame. It was creepy. Really creepy." A Fatal Frame reference? That's pretty cool. He asks his friend if he still wants to come over, but he says he's gonna wait till the weekend. Loomis seems pretty spooked after playing that game. I mean, he gets scared by the thunder when going up to his room. He hears a banging noise coming from the room upstairs and approaches the door. When he bursts in, he finds his friends in the middle of some private business. They tell him to get out, but before he does, he says, "I found you guys in the game. You got it good." Apparently his roommates haven't played for hours, but Loomis is implying that some of the bodies he found in that room were those of his friends' in-game characters. So I guess after each person dies, their body stays in the game. Loomis leaves and goes to bed, but wakes up from a nightmare about the game. We see a flash of a woman coming at him, and he's being hung by a chain. He puts his glasses on and tries to turn on the light, but it doesn't work. Instead, he grabs his Zippo lighter and heads downstairs. He walks past a mirror and gets another flash of a woman, but a moment later, there's nothing there. He keeps walking toward the kitchen and hears a weird noise. Loomis reassures himself it's not real and not to freak out. He gets a drink and starts walking back to bed, when he hears that weird noise again. It's like a vibrating or something. He pauses and says, "Hello?" and calls out for his friends. Instead, when he turns, he sees the shadow of a woman standing in his hallway. He throws his glass in a panic and runs upstairs to his friend's room. The shadow is following him, and on the way upstairs, we see the mirror is now broken. That will be important later. When he opens the door where his friends were staying, he's greeted by a horrifying sight. Their bodies have been mutilated, and one of them hung from the ceiling. He backs out of the room in disbelief and is caught off guard by something. A chain appears around his neck and he is pulled over the balcony and hung just like his character in the game. If we look at how he found his friends and how they looked in the room, they were also killed in an identical way to how he found their bodies in the game.
Coincidence? I think not!
The next day we are following his friend Hutch, the one he called to tell about the game. He walks into his boss's office and assumes he's in trouble. Turns out, his boss is trying to beat Silent Hill 4 and needs his help. This is back when there wasn't a YouTube video walkthrough for every video game ever made. It may seem kinda cheap, but I'm glad they're mentioning some classic horror games. While explaining how to beat the boss to his boss, Hutch gets a phone call. The news that his friend Loomis is dead. He looks devastated, and the next time we see him is at the funeral. He talks to a girl named Abigail, who was also supposed to go hang out with Loomis and his friends that night, but couldn't make it. It's probably a good thing they didn't go, but Hutch feels guilty about turning down his friend and then never being able to see him again. Their conversation is interrupted when a young girl approaches Hutch. Her name is Emma, and this is Loomis's sister. She gives Hutch a bag that belonged to Loomis. He says, "Are you sure you don't want this?" But she says, "My parents don't want me playing those video games, so they were gonna throw them out. They were too violent. Besides, he would want you to have them." They hug and walk away. Before Hutch leaves, Abigail gives him her number in case he needs someone to talk to. Hutch leaves the funeral to go meet up with some friends to talk about what happened. October and her brother Phineas.
Didn't think you'd be back so soon. Give us a kiss.
Finn says, "Tragedy, Hutch. First your parents and now this? God dealt the straws and gave you the short one." We quickly learn that Finn has a strange and abrasive sense of humor, but Hutch seems to enjoy it. October wants to know what happened. Hutch says the only thing he knows is that he was murdered, him and his two friends. They go through the bag and find some old pictures of Hutch and Loomis, and a lighter. When Finn lights the lighter, Hutch has a flashback of a fire and quickly says, "Yeah, you can keep that." Then Finn apologizes. We get the impression that something really traumatic involving fire happened to Hutch in the past. The last thing he pulls out of the bag is a game with no cover. Just a blank white sheet with the written words, "Stay alive." Hutch tells him that's the last thing that Loomis was doing before he died, so he's a bit hesitant to play the game. But this only makes Finn want to play the game even more. That night they all meet up at Hutch's apartment for a little party to play the game. Hutch said Loomis did some beta testing, so they're all excited to play this unreleased game. Before anyone arrives, Hutch hears a strange noise coming from the hall, so he approaches the peephole. When he looks out, we get the most unnecessary jump scare ever. What kind of hat is that? I've only ever seen bookies wear that hat, or Jim Carrey in The Mask pretending to be an accountant or something. Anyway, this is Swink. Why does everyone in this movie have odd names? Swink, Hutch, Phineas, October, Loomis. Everyone else arrives, but before starting the game, Abigail shows up as well. The girl Hutch met at the funeral. In the uncut version, there's a short conversation where Hutch tells Abigail he met Loomis while playing Unreal Tournament. They sit down to play the game together and have multiple screens hooked up so everyone can play. They're even playing with Hutch's boss, Miller, who we learned earlier likes to play video games. They don't know anything about this game, other than they shouldn't have it. One thing that's kind of weird is they only have one copy of the game, so how are they playing on like 5 different screens, and then how is Miller playing in a completely different place? Oh well. They turn on the game and it says Bellman Games presents Stay Alive. The screen zooms in on a book floating in a river of blood. The book opens, but then the game just sits there, doing nothing. It won't let Hutch do anything. That's when Abigail suggests maybe they have to read the words. At the top of the page, it says, "The Prayer of Elizabeth." Swink doesn't think so. That's next-gen technology. That shouldn't even be possible. Yet, when Hutch begins to read the words, they light up.
Come to me, clouds. Whoa.
Either this game has some really advanced technology, or there's something else going on. Swink thinks it must be some kind of seance. That doesn't sound good. Finn doesn't care one bit. He just wants to hurry up and get in the game, so they finish reading the words. Come to me, clouds. May you rise as an evil storm, born to rip them open. Let the cover of night bear witness and destroy those who resist. So they shall harm me not. Let the blood of many cleanse me, preserving beauty eternal. I pray you. As soon as they are finished reading this, they are allowed to enter the game. But before they do, we see something moving behind them. It could be the Predator using its cloaking device, but more likely it's some kind of spirit or entity, and probably the same thing that's responsible for killing Loomis and his friends. The game begins and they're given an introduction by a narrator.
Welcome. If you're listening to this, it means you've made a grave mistake. You spoke the words, and soon you will die for it. At this very moment, the evil of this place courses through your veins. You have been marked for death. Your choices brought you here, to Garouge Plantation. 200 years ago, Countess Elizabeth Bathory opened Garouge as a finishing school for the young.
October thinks that she can remember hearing something about Garouge. Her grandmother would tell her if she didn't get back before dark, but then she can't remember the ending to the saying. However, she has heard of this place in real life, hinting that this game might be based on some true events. The narrator was cut off by October, but we get to hear the end of what he was saying.
What happened to those girls was so depraved that all accounts were stricken from public record. The evil of Garouge has been reborn. Your salvation lies beyond the gates of this plantation. Your only chance is this. Uncover the horrible truth about Garouge Plantation and stop the evil. But in order to do that, you must stay alive.
Swink admits he's starting to get a little creeped out. As the narrator was speaking, everyone was creating their character in-game. Kinda cool they went through the effort to show that. They can also choose their primary weapon, secondary weapon, and a thrown object. Once they start playing the game, they are in front of the mansion. After taking only a few steps, they are approached by a little zombie girl, slowly walking and twitching. When she gets close enough, she jumps toward Hutch and he shoots her. The narrator gives them an important piece of information. If they think they're about to die, drop a wild rose. This will give them a chance to escape. According to October, the undead can't cross the twig of a wild rose. Finn immediately tells his sister to stop reading so much goth chick stuff and lay off the incense. He also complains the game is moving too slow. Then we cut to them running through a cemetery absolutely filled with undead and him panicking as they try to find their way through.
On your left, left! God damn it!
They make it to Bathory's tomb, and Miller runs in. Finn yells at him not to shut the door, but he does anyway. Now he's locked in by himself. Nice. Hutch and the others are in the mansion. They see a glowing wardrobe that leads to a secret room. Once inside, they find a painting of the woman who ran the school, Countess Elizabeth Bathory. Below the painting is the diary from the beginning of the game. Miller is below in the tombs exploring the tunnels. The doors were locked earlier, but now they are open, so he's gonna look around. He finds a room and his controller starts to vibrate, indicating danger. But he's out of roses, so he decides to just check it out quickly and leave. He doesn't want to get killed after all. There's blood all over the floor, and it looks like some kind of torture room. He says that he's seen a flash of a dead girl or something. Before he can leave, the Countess appears in the room and stabs him. Almost immediately after dying in the game, he sees a shadow in his office and yells out to see if anyone is there, but no answer. He tries to reassure himself saying, "You know what they say, you play a game long enough you start to see stuff, or have seizures." Swink tells him, well, you can have seizures. As far as perceptive reality, the longer you play the game, your subconscious mind will perceive it as reality, but that's just a theory. However, linked with your retinal memory, it can, and he gets cut off. I looked this up out of curiosity, and there is at least some truth to what he's saying. At least that it is a theory that people have thought of. After Miller dies, everyone decides to call it quits for tonight, since some of them have work tomorrow. Right before they stop, Swink finds a cheat to make the zombies appear with no clothes. It's up, down, left, right, BA, which if you haven't been living under a rock, you will recognize as the Konami code, also sometimes called the Contra code. The group agrees to meet again soon to play. Back at the office, Miller gathers up his stuff and starts leaving, but is very creeped out. Before he can walk outside, his office door opens up by itself. He bursts into the room to see if he can catch anyone, but it's empty. He locks the door again and we see a figure at the end of the hall. Miller doesn't see it and says out loud, "Perceptive reality." Just then the door opens up by itself again. He turns to look and we see something move behind him. He goes back into his office for a second time and hears his game controller vibrating. He reaches under the desk to get it, but when he looks up, he sees a woman in the reflection raise her head. He yells in fear and is killed immediately. In the flash, we can see it was a woman with a red dress. Bathory. She's the one killing people. That means the story the narrator told was true. And so was the warning, that they've made a grave mistake. The next day, Hutch shows up for work and the office is full of police. Upon entering, he is informed that Miller has been murdered. They ask Hutch some questions, but nothing seems suspicious. The detective tells Hutch to give him a call if he remembers anything. The detective's name is Thibodeau. There's another one of those weird names. Before leaving the office, Hutch sees Miller's body, stabbed in the chest, laying on the desk. Hutch meets back up with everyone at what looks like an internet cafe. Finn is still playing the game and says, "Look at this. It's Miller's character in the game, and he was killed in the exact same way." After 4 people have died playing this game, I might start getting a little suspicious. Hutch says, "I don't want to look at that," and has to turn away. October tells her brother if you had any less sense you'd be half a penny. Finn wants to continue playing the game, but everyone else has had enough. He says, "Let's do this for Miller." Hutch gets mad and says, "You're not playing for Loomis or Miller, so don't even try to say that." Finn tells him, "Well then how about you guys leave and let me play by myself?" October has to get mad at her brother for once again having no common sense. Finn apologizes to his sister and continues playing alone. The others go outside and we learn a bit more about Abigail. She's from Georgia. Her parents have good jobs, and she's going to Princeton soon. October tries to light a cigarette, but the lighter once again makes Hutch freak out. Abigail wonders what's wrong, and Hutch says he's got a thing with fire. Long story, no big deal. Right now, he's more worried about how they found Miller's body in the game, and is thinking there could be something more going on. Swink suggests it is a bit odd for them to find Miller killed in the exact same way. Back inside, Finn is still playing the game and finds the Countess on a horse carriage. He's using a mirror to see her, and it breaks. Finn says, "Oh, I forgot, you don't like mirrors." That must be something he learned in-game that we didn't see, because before this, no one's mentioned anything about mirrors. Though the mirror is broken, he's able to spin it around and use the other side, which is just a shiny metal surface. This can't be broken. As the carriage is approaching in the game, he hears a horse in real life. Back outside, Hutch is finally putting things together. What are the odds that 4 people would be murdered right after playing the game? Then he remembers Finn is playing the game right now, so he rushes back inside. Everyone thinks he's crazy, but better safe than sorry. When they open the door, he's slumped over on the laptop, but sits back up, giving them a sigh of relief. Hutch tells him his idea about people dying after they play the game, and Finn says, "I know you've been through a lot, but you're freaking everybody out." Hutch takes a step back and thinks maybe Finn is right. Maybe he's looking into this a little too much. This is when everyone starts to have strange experiences though. Hutch goes home, and while shaving, we see his back and arm have scars from a fire. While looking in the mirror, his reflection changes. His pupils go white and the mirror breaks, scaring him. He jumps back, but his reflection is back to normal, and the mirror isn't broken. Swink is repairing a computer when blood starts coming out of it. He doesn't notice until it's all over his hands, but like the mirror, it disappears. October is working in the cafe and sees a reflection of a zombie in the mirror. Then Finn is almost hit by a truck. That night, Hutch goes to his office to use the computer for research. He looks up his friend's murder and checks the details of the case. No discernible marks, and the couple was killed with a large pair of silver shears. You don't see those too often. While on the computer, we see something undead walk across the office, but Hutch doesn't notice. When leaving the office, we see some other creature hiding behind a shelf as the camera pans by. Hutch checks out Miller's office out of curiosity and hears a noise. Sounds like a vibrating controller, but it's a cell phone. He looks under the desk and reaches the same way as Miller. When he stands up, there's a reflection in the mirror, just like what happened before. But this time, it's just another employee. Hutch leaves the office, but notices the mirror is broken, just like at the beginning of the movie. The next day, he meets up with everyone to show them what he found. They all seen Miller was stabbed to death, and the cops think it was with a pair of shears. Loomis's friends were also killed with shears. Sarah, her body was completely drained of blood. Loomis's neck was broken just like how he died in the game. They all died the same way they died in the game. This can't be a coincidence. They are really freaked out now, especially Swink. October's worried about her brother because he's not here. Finn is currently out cruising in his car, which is a Ferrari. How does this guy afford a Ferrari? He's driving down the road singing, but then stops. Seems like he's trying to pretend everything is alright, but he knows something is up. It starts to get dark all of a sudden, so he speeds up. That's when a figure steps out into the road and he has to quickly swerve out of the way, almost hitting a tree. A bit shaken up, he gets out of the car and calls his sister and tells them to come pick him up. He asks Swink about the perceptive reality thing and what kind of stuff you can see. He desperately wants to believe this isn't real. They reassure Finn he should be fine because he hasn't died in the game. They leave to pick him up, but things intensify for Finn. While standing on the road, he starts to hear horses in the distance. He says to himself, "Wait a minute. She only comes out at night." The intro to the game did say something about being under the cover of night, so maybe that's what he was talking about. Finn is standing there listening intently when he hears a whip. As soon as he turns, he's hit by a horse carriage and killed. That's weird. Why did he die when he hadn't been killed in the game yet? Not long after, the group arrives and finds Finn's dead body. After, when they look on the computer, Finn's character died the exact same way. I guess the game got sick and tired of waiting for them to play, so it just started playing by itself. When the police arrive, they're obviously a bit suspicious of Hutch. He's been connected to a lot of deaths recently. The officer says, "If I find you around one more dead body, I'm gonna have to bring you in." Hutch tries to explain that all of his friends died after playing the game Stay Alive. They think he's insane, of course, but agree to look into it. One of the cops sees the game open on the laptop and tries playing it. Swink tries to stop him, but it's no use. He tells him, "You have to read that before you can play." And we hear the cop begin to read the seance. That's probably not good. Hutch is talking to a detective when he notices the other one is playing the game. He rushes over and pushes him away, saying, "Don't play that." They leave and don't think anything of it. October is very upset about her brother, saying that he was all she had left. She says, "Why did you bring this game into our lives?" and pretty much blames him for Finn's death. I mean, how the hell would he know a video game was gonna kill them? October kinda gets over her grief a bit and says to Hutch, I don't want this game to hurt anyone else, and neither does he. After Finn's death, they promise to each other not to play the game anymore. She tells him to find out everything he can about the game and meet back up with them. They're gonna break into 2 groups. Hutch goes to Loomis's house to see if they can find out anything about the game. Since he was the one who had it originally, maybe he knows where it came from. While looking for an open window, Hutch finally explains why he's afraid of fire. When he was a kid, his dad thought his mom was sleeping around, which according to him, she wasn't. His father was so angry, he lit the house on fire and his mother was killed, and he almost died too, but was rescued by a firefighter. His dad will be 76 when he gets out of prison. Well, that explains why he's afraid of fire, jeez. They get inside the house and Abigail says, haven't the cops probably found everything? But Hutch knows where Loomis hides his phone. He looks through the phone and finds the website for the game company Loomis was beta testing for, Bellman Games, and they also find an address. Hutch and Abigail are going to head there now. Before leaving, October thinks that maybe the woman from the game could be behind this. Elizabeth Bathory. She chains her victims with shackles and kills them with shears. Hunts them down in a black, horse-drawn carriage. Sounds kinda familiar. She's been reading a book called the Malleus Daemonium. It means the witch's hammer and was used by witch hunters during the Inquisition. It says if they can find Bathory, they need to put 3 nails through her heart, neck, then forehead. The nails are meant to put her human spirit back into her body. The final, most important part is that an undead soul is only cleansed by burning its blood. Hutch still isn't sure if it's her ghost doing it, but she says it's like a seance. A strong enough spirit can be brought back with the proper text, which they all read. What they don't know is the cop that played the game is already dead. In the theatrical version, he was killed with shears. I'm pretty sure. It doesn't show it, but that's my guess. However, in the unrated version, he's killed by this crazy saw contraption that rips his head apart. This device also has some significance in the story. After the cop is killed, the police show up looking for Hutch, so October and Swink have to run away. Hutch and Abigail are currently driving to the address they found in Loomis's phone. It's an old house, and Hutch says, looks like a strange place to make a video game. They knock, but there's no answer, so they go inside and look around. Abigail finds a doll that looks exactly like Bathory. Just then, a man enters the room behind her and says, "What are you doing in my house? Who are you?" Hutch enters the room a moment later and says, "Loomis Crowley." The man immediately calms down and says, "Loomis Crowley. He should have never taken my game." So this is the creator of Stay Alive. The entire sequence with the game designer is cut from the theatrical version, which I think is crazy. Since he said Loomis shouldn't have taken my game, I guess that means even Loomis wasn't supposed to have it. He must have come over to talk about the game and stole a copy. The game developer's name is Jonathan Malkus. Usually he creates a game and sells it to a publisher, but this game is different. Growing up, he couldn't get the tales of Elizabeth Bathory out of his head. He confirms that she was in fact a real person, and that an element of truth adds horror. I mean, look at what it's done to them. Hutch starts to explain that it's a little more complicated than being scared. 5 of his friends are dead, the same way they died in the game. At first he becomes defensive, saying, "Are you saying this is my fault?" Abigail says, "Well, 5 people are dead, and you created the game." Hutch puts down the photos of his dead friends on the table, and Jonathan seems to be disturbed. He tells Hutch that there's a local author who wrote a book all about Elizabeth Bathory. The book is called The Lady of Blood. She's easy to track down, and she might be able to help. So that's where they go next.
Disturbing tale, to say the least.
The scene with the author is also cut from the theatrical version, so both the game designer and the woman we're about to meet are never in the original version of the movie. Also, she's never named in the movie, and even the credits, she's just called the author, so I'll just be calling her the author. They go to speak with her, and she is more than happy to tell them about the Countess. She explains that Bathory was a very beautiful woman who traveled here from Romania about 200 years ago. No one knows exactly why she left Romania, but it probably had something to do with her obsession. She had an unhealthy passion for torturing young girls. Why, you might ask? Well, to live forever, of course. She went as far as smashing all the mirrors in her mansion so she wouldn't see herself age. Abigail wants to know, what does torturing girls have to do with staying young? The author responds, their blood. Story goes, a young chambermaid was trimming the hair of the Countess when she accidentally cut her. The Countess then stabbed the girl to death with a pair of shears. And then, She thought the girl's fresh blood made her skin softer, younger. This began her obsession, and how she got the name, the Blood Countess. From there on out, she would hunt the countryside in her black carriage, taking young girl after young girl and bringing them back to her torture chamber. There, she would bleed them dry and bathe in their warm blood. Eventually, the local magistrate couldn't ignore the crazy rumors anymore, and they found 39 young girls slaughtered. As punishment, Elizabeth was walled up in her tower alive, condemning her to a death while living. She then cursed the parish and vowed that one day she would be resurrected. And when that day came, her wrath would come down on men, women, and children. We can see in the tower that Bathory was locked into some kind of device. The same device that killed the cop in the car. According to record, Garouge Plantation burned down over 100 years ago. But apparently, the Black Tower where she resides and the underground chambers remain. Their location is a mystery though, because the parish buried the story, sealed the records of the case, and vowed to never speak of it again. Abigail wants to know if the author believes Bathory's spirit could be brought back. And just like October said, with the right text, any powerful spirit can be brought back. After leaving, Hutch has the realization that the text they read in the game is the proper text. That's how she was brought back. The movie makes a lot more sense with the game developer and the author of the book. It may slow down the pace a little bit, but at least we actually know why she was killing people and why the mirrors get broken. It also explains why all the zombie creatures in the game look like young girls. These were probably all her victims. It also explains why when Hutch read the autopsy, it said the girl at Loomis's house had all her blood removed. It seems like she only bathes in female blood, so she just kills the guys for fun. Elizabeth Bathory is in fact a famous serial killer from the 1500s in Hungary. She was accused of killing and torturing hundreds of girls and women from 1590 to 1610. What's interesting is that these claims have some contention. Some believe she was guilty of these crimes. There was apparently bodies found during the time of the arrest and testimony from over 300 individuals. Others believe that this was all a ploy to destroy the family's reputation and power in the region. So nobody knows how true the story really is. Some people believe that Bathory was part of the inspiration for Bram Stoker's Dracula, but no direct evidence of that has ever been found. She has always been considered vampiric in nature though, given such names as the Blood Countess and Countess Dracula. The bathing in blood to attain eternal youth has undoubtedly inspired many stories. The first thing that came to my mind was Lilith from 30 Days of Night, bathing in blood. They all meet at Loomis's house and discuss the plan. They agree they must have awoken Bathory when they read that text at the beginning of the game. That's when Abigail notices the game is playing by itself. So this proves you can't just stop playing the game to escape being killed. Because if you do, the game will just start to play on its own. They can see the character on screen is October. She's outside having a smoke. Just then, outside, October sees something in the house next door. And for some reason, she decides to go into the house, which seems like a bad idea. The group runs outside looking for October, and Swink says, "I thought it couldn't get us if we didn't play. That's the rules, right?" But Hutch replies, "I don't know the rules. Maybe there are no rules." October goes into the house under construction, and upstairs finds a pair of shackles lying on the floor. Then something moves across the room. Nearby, she grabs a hammer and some nails. I guess she's going to try to avenge her brother alone. While looking around, she finds a nail gun. She sees a shadow on the other side of some plastic and approaches it slowly. It's Bathory, and she immediately spins around. October tries to shoot her with the nail gun, but it goes right through. Okay, so my guess is they need to find her actual body and put the nails in that, not her spirit. October tries to run away, but is pulled back. Then a chain locks around her ankle and hangs her from the ceiling. Everyone tries to run in and find her, but the door is locked. And they're too late. The Countess slashes October's throat. Just as it happens, October drops to the floor and magically the door opens for the others. Hutch runs inside to save her. All he can do is hold her for a few moments before she slips away. Hutch says, "No, I can fix this. Please don't do this to me." Another person that Hutch loved is gone. At this rate, he's not going to have any friends left. They leave to continue their mission and head toward the game designer. They know Bathory's body is in the tower, and if anyone knows where the tower is, it's got to be him. He knows everything about Elizabeth Bathory. Hutch blames himself for everything that's happened. But like I said before, how the hell could anyone predict a video game could kill you? He tells Abigail that she would have been better off if they never met. Her life was perfect before this mess. That's when we find out that earlier she actually lied. She admits that she's not going to Princeton. Her parents don't have a good job, and the van she drives, yeah, that's actually home sweet home. Most of the time she lies because she doesn't like seeing people get embarrassed for asking. What's important is they need to stop this thing. There's not much time left. Hutch now knows they need to find her body in order to stop her. Swink pulls out his laptop and Hutch says, "What are you doing?" Swink's plan is to play the game in order to buy them some time and act as a distraction. They need to stay alive in the game long enough to destroy Bathory's body in real life. This is a pretty good plan, because we've seen before that if you don't play, the game will play on its own, so you might as well be in control. They arrive back at the game designer's house. Swink stays by the van and plays the game while Abigail and Hutch investigate. Jonathan's motorcycle is still there, but when they check the house, he's gone. Wonder why he left. While playing the game, Swink realizes that the house he's looking at in the game is the same as the house they arrived at in real life. He begins to direct Hutch through the house using the game as a reference. Hutch is getting creeped out saying, "Aw, Swink, how do you know all this?" He leads Hutch into the backyard where there's a big iron gate. When Hutch squeezes through, he's greeted by the sight of the cemetery from the game, complete with the tower where Bathory was locked up. Hutch and Swink realize this is Garouge Plantation, which means it didn't burn down. They probably just said that so people wouldn't go looking for it. At the same time, Abigail goes through the wardrobe just like she did in the game, and there's a secret room. After walking up the stairs, she is greeted by the sight of creepy dolls, pictures of eyeballs, and a whole lot of stuff about the Countess. This is the work of the game developer Jonathan. This is where he was doing all his research for the game. This guy seems way too interested in Bathory to just be a fan. I think he knowingly put that text in the game. He's also gone when they return to the house, which seems a bit suspicious, especially since his motorcycle is still left behind. So how did he leave? It's possible he was killed, but I don't think so. Like I said earlier, in the theatrical version of this movie, we never meet the game developer. So when Abigail finds this room, it's super confusing. When I first watched the theatrical version, I had a feeling it was the room of the guy who made the game, so I did kind of figure it out on my own, but it was just a guess, and I had no concrete answer. I was left wondering, who made the game? Was it Bathory herself somehow? Surely a 200-year-old countess couldn't have programmed a video game. At least in the unrated cut, we know this room belonged to Jonathan, who was holding a pair of shears when he approached them, just like Bathory. I think this guy was a little more obsessed with Bathory than he let on. I also noticed the tattoos on his neck look kinda similar to some of the markings in the room. I don't know if I'm reading too far into that though. Could be nothing. While in that room, Abigail finds a painting of the Countess, and the shears and diary from the game. Right after finding them, the lights in the room go out and she's attacked. Hutch runs to the house to try and save her while being guided by Swink. He needs a crowbar to get into the door. So in the game, Swink drops one on the ground and tells Hutch to look down, and the crowbar is now there. It's like the video game and real life are overlapping now that they're at the plantation. Hutch is running to find her, all the while Abigail is being dragged through the dark. At one point she has cockroaches all over her. She is grabbed by hands on either side, then the Countess appears with her shears. Hutch can't get there in time, but Swink has an idea. He runs to the location in the game and sees Abigail being held by two younger girls and Bathory about to kill her. He throws down some roses in game, and at the same time, the hands let go of Abigail and the lights come back on. He was able to save her by using the game. Hutch and Abigail share a kiss and Swink reminds them they need nails, roses, and most importantly, they need to burn the blood in order to destroy Bathory completely. The weird thing about this scene is that the part where they kiss is only included in the theatrical version and wasn't in the unrated version that I watched. While Swink is talking to Hutch on the phone, the door to the van closes on its own, locking Swink out and he's unable to control his character. In-game, he's about to get run over by a horse carriage just like Finn. He's able to reach his hand through the window and move his character out of the way just in time.
Oh yeah.
He breaks a window to get back into the van and continue playing. While in there, shadows start moving around in the game. Then on the outside of the van, it's her. He gets angry and accuses Bathory of cheating because his character is still alive. And he's right, he didn't die in the game yet. So like Hutch said, maybe there is no rules. The Countess must be getting worried about how close they are. Swink leaves the van and runs through the woods trying to get away. The black carriage of Bathory is chasing him when he falls into some bushes and gets tangled up. Bathory exits the carriage with her shears in hand. The next thing we see is Hutch and Abigail finding Swink's laptop in the van, with his character dead. He didn't make it. Now there's only 2 of them left. They're in the cemetery gathering nails and some roses, because just like the video game, they can't cross a rose. Abigail also has the shears she found in Jonathan's secret room. Right after she puts the roses in her bag, Bathory appears in her carriage and starts chasing them. Abigail goes inside one of the mausoleums, but Hutch waits outside the door. He grabs one of the roses out of the bag and holds it up. The carriage is speeding toward him, but just before the horse hits him, they fade away. Hutch goes inside and the 2 of them realize this is the same mausoleum from the game with the tunnels below, and it leads to the tower where Bathory's body is. They open the coffin and enter the tunnels. Hutch drops a rose in the tunnel, but as he walks away, it turns black. I guess the roses can't survive down here? A spirit comes at them and Abigail throws a rose at it and it works though. So I guess you just can't leave them on the ground? They make it about 20 feet down the tunnel before they're attacked by a group of girls that look like they're all from the movie The Grudge. They don't even try to fight because there's too many, so they run away and eventually find a door. Once inside, they throw down a rose and realize this is one of Bathory's torture chambers. There's chains, ropes, and many tools around the room. Also, they didn't show this rose turning black, so I don't know why it only happened with the one before. Hutch says there should be another door. He remembers this room from the game. The tower should be this way, and he opens the door and is greeted by a staircase that leads up. The body of the Countess should be just up there. They are so close to ending this thing. Before Abigail can follow Hutch out of the room, the door slams and locks, separating them. Abigail tells him to go on and finish this. He can't believe he's losing someone else, but he reluctantly gives her a rose and she gives him the lighter. He climbs up and enters the room at the top of the tower. In there, he finds a bed covered with a white veil. As he pulls it back, he's greeted with the sight of Bathory's preserved body. It must be sustained by some kind of magic, or maybe the blood she collects from people. He pulls out the nails and starts by putting one on her throat. While Hutch is in the tower, Bathory has come for Abigail. The room goes dark and she is hoisted from the ceiling by a chain, just like October was. In the unrated version, Bathory is naked in this scene. This is when we get a better look at Bathory. Pale skin with a blackness around her eyes. There's a bathtub below Abigail. The Countess is going to drain her blood and bathe in it. Like I said before, in the uncut version, Bathory is naked, implying that she is going to bathe in the blood right now. So it makes it a little more sinister. It's one of the few times I can think of where the nudity actually changes the implications of the scene. It did say before she likes to bathe in fresh, warm blood. Bathory lets some blood drip onto her hand, and then she tastes it. When you think about it, she's pretty similar to a vampire. She is somehow using blood to extend her life through dark magic. Since the blood was removed from the girl at the beginning of the movie, it seems that even now, she still needs blood to continue existing in this state. Or else, why would she keep killing and harvesting blood? Hutch takes another nail and puts it through her hands. Then, finally her head. When he hits the final nail, the room begins to vibrate and shake like the game controller. At the same time, her spirit disappears from the torture room and the weapon is dropped in place. Abigail is safe. After Hutch put the last nail through Bathory's head, the room was shaking and he knocked over a lamp with fluid in it. Hutch is packing up his bag, but he forgot something. The nails don't kill Bathory. It's only meant to put her spirit back into her physical body, which means she's still very much alive. Her once lifeless corpse now sits up in bed without Hutch noticing. A moment later, he hears something hit the ground and it's Bathory, pulling the nails out and dropping them on the ground. The last nail falls out on its own, like she's Lucian from Underworld. Hutch knows what's behind him now, and he has an idea. He looks down and sees his laptop has a shiny chrome back, also an Alienware. Nice. Hutch remembers what October and the author said. The mirrors in the game in the mansion were all broken because she couldn't stand to see herself grow old. He slowly turns around and faces her, pale skin and black eyes staring back. That's when he raises the laptop, and for a moment, nothing happens. But once Bathory sees her reflection, she starts screaming an awful loud shriek and her mouth stretches open like the ice cream man from Legion. This scene is genuinely unsettling. For me anyway. The way she just screams while staring at Hutch, then turns toward him in a strange, stilted way while still semi-locked in place. Creepy. It seems like at any moment she'll spring across the room, but it's more frightening imagining what she might do. It's kind of interesting that her reflection is like a weakness. Similar to one of my favorite versions of Dracula, it's like she created her own weakness. In this moment, Hutch grabs the lighter from his bag and lights the lamp fluid that fell onto the ground earlier, catching the room on fire. She bursts into flames, flailing around, but Hutch can't get out. The door is locked. He's forced to stay in the room full of fire. His worst fear. He begins having flashbacks of when his house burned down, seeing a young version of himself and family photos on the walls. He screams in anger and finally someone kicks the door in. It's Swink. He's alive. We'll talk about how he survived in a minute. Abigail is with Swink, so the three of them escape the tower and Bathory's body is finally destroyed. The nightmare of Garu's plantation has finally been put to an end. The end of the movie goes back to the guy working at the video game store. He opens up a box and pulls out a game and says, "Killer." He walks it over to the shelf and puts the game into a PlayStation 2, like a demo for people to play in the store. It's the game. And right above it is a video game magazine talking about how Stay Alive is a game to die for. So the game has somehow been released to the public, which means people are going to be reading the seance and releasing Bathory all over again. This must be the work of the game developer Jonathan. Now let's go over a couple mysteries and common questions about this movie. First of all, how did Swink survive being attacked? Well, if you look at the bush that he falls into when Bathory arrives, it's a rose bush. The roses create a barrier against evil spirits, and he was wrapped up in a whole bush, so he was very safe. Not sure why it still showed his character dead on the laptop though. That must have been Bathory trying to mess with Hutch and Abigail. This movie was extensively cut down to be PG-13 in theaters, which in my opinion was a massive mistake. The longer unrated version is much better. It has 2 extra characters, 3 if you include the girl in the office, the original gore, which kinda adds to a horror movie, the swearing, extended scenes, and more. Don't get me wrong, some of the added scenes are totally useless, but having the gore and swearing back is worth it. While doing research for this video, I found many people were confused about how Swink died and a few other aspects of the film. Most attributed this to the theatrical version not being as clear about the legend of Bathory and so on. Another good question is, now that the body is destroyed, how can anyone stop her? I guess the only way to stop her now would be to beat the game, if that's even possible. Swink hadn't even died in the game yet and Bathory still tried to kill him, so it'd be pretty hard to beat the game. It's also never outright stated what Bathory is. Did she gain all these abilities from drinking blood? She's able to kill people in spirit form, appear at will, lock doors, and seems to be quite strong, able to kill multiple people with ease and hang them from the ceiling. It's possible she was a witch that practiced dark magic, but it only mentions the blood. Apparently she would bathe in the blood to stay eternally young. She also tastes the blood of Abigail, so it's possible she drank the blood as well, like a vampire. However, the book they used to defeat her was used against witches during the Inquisition, so that's some evidence that she accomplished her immortality at least partially with magic. Most likely some kind of spell or ritual. That's my video on Stay Alive, probably one of the coolest horror movie concepts. This movie was most likely trying to capitalize on the recent success of video games like Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Obscure, and Fatal Frame, which is mentioned in the movie. The film is far from perfect, but like many from this era, it's a guilty pleasure. The story is fun, the characters are not amazing but serve their purpose, and the visuals of the game and the creatures in the game are probably my favorite part. The opening scene of the movie reels you in, and the first half is really strong. The second half of the movie is not quite as strong. It planted so many cool ideas, and now it's trying hard to explain them all in a way that makes sense. If I had to rate this movie honestly, I would give it a 6.5 out of 10, just like Pulse. If I had to include the nostalgia factor, the atmosphere, and just how fun this movie is, it's a 9 out of 10 in my books. If there's any other movies, TV shows, or video games you want me to cover, please leave them in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, and subscribe if you haven't. It helps out a lot and I really appreciate it. As always, an extra shout out to all my members for supporting the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.